Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. We are making our Week 13 picks against the spread today, as we mentioned previously, and we are just going to dive right into it. As usual, I'm Aaron, and I am accompanied by Mr. John Harris. Quick review, because I've been failing to do this, and I'll keep it brief, of the standings, because I noticed I was reading a Bleacher Report thing, because they do the picks, all their staff, and they don't put their season record. Just I see you, Bleacher Report, hiding your experts. Just kidding. But anyways, going into
Just
this,
real quick,
yeah,
shout out to the people at the Athletic. They do put it, and last week I
okay.
think they went 3-12, and they were like, "Listen, guys, we sucked."
I mean, it's a tough year.
Yeah,
Anyways, but yeah, and we'll get right into records will show that. John after went 5-10 last week, so he is 82-98 overall. I went 6-9. We were tied going into last week, so I am 83-97. So if things keep going the way they're going, I'm gonna lose the game this week, and we'll be tied right back up. Anyways,
yep.
we're gonna start with John's game. The Dallas Cowboys. They are favored by 6.5. We already made that pick, just FYI, but we're just re-going over it. John went Dallas. I went New Orleans. Once again, if you don't know spreads, so basically, since John picked Dallas and they're the favorite, Dallas has to win by 7 points or more for him to cover/win. Otherwise, I get the win, even if New Orleans wins. So we made those picks last episode, and Taysom Hill is starting. You'll be seeing this after, But anyways, so my pick stays New Orleans. So now we're gonna start off with the Sunday games, starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are favored by 11.5, going to the Atlanta Falcons. I'll go first, and I'll keep this very brief for this game. I'm going Tampa Bay. I know they got Cordero Patterson back at Atlanta, and they looked okay last week, but it was Jacksonville, and we're starting to see this Bucs defense get a little bit healthier, so they could get potentially better, especially in the secondary, which has been their main weakness. And once again, without Calvin Ridley, I know Cordero's great, but they're mainly using him as a running back, and he's only one guy, and then Cal Pitts is there, but he's still a rookie. So um, I'm going Tampa Bay here to win and cover. John, are you going to shock the world here, or do you think you're going Tampa Bay as well?
I'm going to Tampa Bay as well. I mean, the last time they played, it was close for a while, and then Tampa scored like 20 straight points in the fourth quarter, and it turned into a blowout.
And I think they had
Uh,
Calvin Ridley that game at least, too.
they did. So there was like a point where it was like 28-20, I think. But then, like I said, Tampa scores 20 straight, became like 48-20. So wasn't even close in that one. And also, since that game, I would say that Tampa has more clearly established that they want to run the ball. Leonard Fournette's gotten involved. We know that Antonio Brown's not going to be there this time, but I don't know. I think Tom Brady just kind of gotten the rhythm of the league and how to play this year. To where at the start of the year, you're still kind of getting warmed up. And then for the Falcons, I think they've just sort of started to fall apart a little bit towards the end here. Um, Solid game last week, but like I said, on our last episode, the prior 2 weeks, they scored 3 points combined against the Patriots and the Cowboys. And I think Tampa has, probably a better defense than Dallas. I don't know the stats. And I think New England's probably better than them this year because New
As
England's
a
defense is
whole, but yeah,
killing it.
it just depends what you
But
look at.
but
Yeah.
still, talent wise, I mean, Tampa's got a great defense, and luckily for them, their corners are starting to get healthy. So yeah, Tampa. I'd be pretty shocked if Atlanta kept this close.
Yeah. So, anyways, we both went Tampa there. Now going over, and I forgot to get who is. I think it's at Chicago this game. My apologies. I'll double check when John goes. But the Arizona Cardinals, they are favored by 7.5, playing the Chicago Bears. Regardless if it's in Arizona or Chicago, I'm going Arizona. I'm not sure about the status of Justin Fields. Nonetheless, even if Kyler Murray isn't fully back, I think he might start. Same with D Hop. Even if he's not fully back, this defense has been clicking, and like we've mentioned before, like we almost saw them lose to the Lions on Thanksgiving. Like this Bears offense is just not very good. It's in the conversation for one of the worst offenses in the league, and this Arizona defense has been one of the best defenses in the league. I just don't see a crazy upset happening here, whether there's Kyler Murray on the field or not. So I'm going Arizona to win and cover. John, how about yourself?
I almost talked myself into taking Chicago, but I can't at this point, especially with the reports that Kyler and Hopkins might be back. I don't know if what if they're fully confirmed or anything yet. But even if they're not, I mean, Arizona just has so many ways to win. It can be through the air. It can be James Conner. Their defense can step up and make plays to where Chicago, I just don't have any faith in their defense. No Khalil Mack. Their secondary has been questionable. Their corners are just not great outside of Jalen Johnson, but even he hasn't been having like a spectacular year. And then offensively, who am I going to rely on? I I don't know, like Darnell Mooney, but that's maybe it. David Montgomery, maybe, but even since the injury, he hasn't really been back. So I just think that even despite potentially, Kyler Hopkins, different guys not being there, if they're not, I'm still comfortable with this. If they are, yeah, Arizona by a mile.
Alrighty, so we both went Arizona there. Now going over to probably one of the better games of the early slate, the Cincinnati Bengals at home in Cincinnati. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. So for me, this is definitely one of the tougher games. But I'm going with Cincinnati. I think I like what I saw last week. They got the run game involved more, which Zach Taylor, like I mentioned last podcast, comes from the I was Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. They want to establish the run, then do things off of that. And we finally saw that last week. And the biggest weakness for the Chargers is their run defense. And we kind of saw that with Denver, never really was able to get the stops they needed to. And then on the flip side, I'm not entirely confident in Cincinnati's defense, but Chargers offense has been kind of predictable, and they just haven't really been patient running the ball as well. And maybe they need, a second running back behind Austin Eckler just to be a little change of pace and keep him fresh. I don't know, but the run game, they haven't really been patient with that. So I'm going Cincinnati to win and cover here. And also, last point too, just West Coast team going to play almost on the East Coast. They have it playing a noon game, so that always can throw players off and such. So, John, who do you have here?
I'm gonna go with the Chargers. I don't really believe in the ability of either defense in this game. I think that for the Bengals, they're gonna run Joe Mixon through the roof in this one. Like that's just it's what's been working for them. I don't think Joe Burrow since like week 10 has had over 200 yards passing, and large in part that's because they're just running the ball so much. I think that's exactly what Cincinnati's going to do here. But on the flip side, I think that the Chargers could really air it out against this Bengals secondary. They have some strong pieces, but at the same time, they get inconsistent. And so I think Keenan Allen could have a really strong outing. I'm not a big believer in Mike Williams this week, but at the same time, Austin Eckler, I don't know. I just like what I see out of the Chargers offense matching up against this defense. So I'm banking on it turning into an offensive shootout. And in that case, I think it could be close. I am a little bit worried just because Cincinnati has the strength running the ball, which, by the way, shout out to Cincinnati and their offensive line after the abysmal performance last year. They are much improved. But I'm a bit worried that with the way that Joe Mixon's running, that they're not going to turn the ball over. And if the Chargers get forced into a few turnovers, that maybe this gets out of hand and the Bengals can just run it for the rest of the game. But like I said, I'm picking it to be an offensive shootout. And so in that case, I think it's going to be close. I'm going to take the Chargers.
All right. So one of our first disagreement of the week, or second, sorry. We had a Dallas New Orleans game. The Thursday game always somehow reason slips my mind. No offense to your Thursday game tonight. Anyways, a game that will probably slip most of our minds, though, will be this next one. Minnesota Vikings. They are favored by 7.5, going to the Detroit Lions. Although my pick may surprise people, I guess. Call it a gut feeling. I'm probably going to be wrong. It's probably one that kills me, and I'm going to really be upset about it come Sunday night. But I'm going Detroit. I think they'll cover. I don't think they'll win. I think they'll keep it close. We saw you can kind of run the ball in Minnesota. So since they've lost some guys, and then the only thing that does scare me is obviously Detroit's just not very good at passing the ball at all. And I'm just afraid at some point they're going to have to. But on the flip side, I mean, also what I'm using for my reasoning, Detroit played a very close game with Cleveland. Similar philosophies here for Cleveland from Minnesota. That's where Stefanski's from. Similar ideologies on offense. Although I will say Minnesota better quarterback, especially as of right now, and better wide receivers in Thielen and Justin Jefferson, obviously. So that is a little dicey for me, but I just feel like Dan Campbell can sniff that win, and they're getting close. They're being competitive. Once again, I don't think they'll win. I just think they'll keep it close. So I'm going Detroit here. John, how about yourself?
I'm gonna take Minnesota. I almost took Detroit, but I think the differentiating factor for me is the Lions. I feel like their ceiling offensively is like 17 points. Like that's kind of the best I can hope for in most of their performances. I don't actually know how many points they average, so maybe it's even worse. For Minnesota, meanwhile, I think their offense has just started to pick things up since they last played Detroit, in which they won 19-17, really close game. They've had 6 games, and 3 of those they put up over 30, and then 2 of those they had 27 and 26. And then the one outlier where they had a bad offensive performance was against the Cowboys, where they put up 16. But on that one, they were like 1 for 13 on third down, which is pretty shocking considering the weapons they have. That feels more of like an outlier performance offensively than really what the talent they have is capable of. So, yeah, I think the Minnesota Vikings offense has really got going. Losing Dalvin Cook does suck, but Alexander Madison doesn't tend to really see much of a drop off offensively. Not that he's Dalvin Cook by any means, but just the way that they can use him and then, further rely on Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, who are, one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. Sure, maybe you shift a little bit more to passing, but you have the weapons to do it. So I'm going to take Minnesota in this one. I will get worried though, because, Kirk Cousins is not very kind to me when I pick him in the spreads.
Yeah, so to your point, Detroit has only scored 20 or more points one time this season, and that was week 1, 33 points
Oof.
against the Niners. And as you all remember, they were getting beaten that game too. It had some late garbage
That game
time
was
as
pretty
touchdown.
crazy too.
It was week
Some
1 too.
onside kicks, some
Yeah.
fumble
But ever since
recoveries.
then, like it's usually been 17 and then 19 against the Rams a couple weeks ago, and then yeah, like you mentioned, it's been some in the teens is where they usually end up. So that
Yeah,
can
so basically, I'm saying Detroit does that, and the Vikings, I think offensively, I'm assuming they put up into the 20s.
we'll see. So there's the third disagreement for us for the week, and now going over to Miami, where the Miami Dolphins they are favored by 4.5, hosting the New York Giants. Daniel Jones has had a neck injury, but apparently he's been practicing. The first they said he was week to week, so I'm not really sure if we'll get him. Regardless if it's him or Mike Glennon, I'm going Miami. They're just on a roll, especially on defense. Defense finally seems to be back. I didn't notice that they were missing Raekwon Davis, one of their defensive linemen. They'd been missing him for a couple of weeks, and he came back last week. And also, just Brian Flores has been clicking as a defensive play caller. A lot of creative, confusing blitzes and just designs. And this is a Giant team that I think everyone that follows football knows they have had issues on the O line, and especially if Daniel Jones isn't 100%. I'm not sure if one bad hit too could take him out with it. I'm not sure the severity of the neck injury. And Mike Glenn's a statue. That's really he's not moving out of that pocket. So I think that will be enough for the Dolphins. And then on the flip side, Tua, like I mentioned last podcast, managing the game well, just don't turn over the ball and just take what's there. So I think Miami will have success, and I wouldn't be shocked if they win. I think they'll definitely cover. I think their defense will probably get a score or two, or at least a key turnover to set up an easy score. So I'm going with Miami here. John, where are you going?
I'm going to go with the Giants, and I never feel comfortable picking the Giants because Daniel Jones is just such a wild card, and I know that he might not even play, but that's even worse because at least Danny, he's better than Mike Glennon. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much I really trust the Dolphins and Tua. I think like statistically, if we eliminate the offensive performances where I'm blanking on their backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, if we eliminate the games or the snaps in which he was playing, offensively, the Dolphins are like the 21st ranked offense in the league. Meanwhile, over the last 4 games, really a lot of the reason they've been winning is their defense. Over the last 4 games, they rank second in EPA per drive and third in success rate. And so their defense has just been showing up big time. But at the same time, those games were against the Texans, the Jets, the Panthers, just some bad offensive teams. And this was also the Panthers, I believe, without Cam Newton, too. So this is uh, maybe that was Sam Darnold's last game or it was PJ Walker. I can't remember. Anyway, I know the Giants are really they're like those are teams that are in their class when it comes to offensive performances. And so I don't necessarily trust the Giants that much, but the 4.5, the fact that it's more than a field goal just feels a little bit big to me for me to trust the Dolphins. I could be dead wrong here. Maybe they're getting their momentum at the right time. The Giants are, as bad as those other teams they've played, but I don't know. I can't trust either of them, so I'm just going to take the underdog and take the points. So I'm taking the Giants.
Alrighty. And by the way, I just added another game I forgot to add earlier. It is Philly, New York, which we'll pick right after this one.
Cool.
Anyways, and this one may be very brief. Indianapolis Colts, they are favored by 10.5 going to the Houston Texans. Obviously, I think Indianapolis is going to win, and I think that they will cover. Houston's had some. I mean, they did lose to the Jets last week. They've had some bright spots in recent weeks. Their secondary is really the strength of their defense, and I just think the Colts, they'll get back to what they do on offense, running the ball. And then on the flip side, the Houston offense is just, it's definitely in the bottom part of the league, and I just don't foresee them putting up enough points and having enough sustained success to keep up with the Colts and put the pressure on them, kind of like the Bucs did. I don't think. I think most people would agree. I don't think Houston's going to be able to do that. So I'm going Indy to win and cover. John, what about yourself?
I might be wrong on this, but I think the last time these two played, I took the Texans and the spread was even bigger than this.
I probably was.
And I'm pretty sure I got it wrong. I'm not going to make that mistake again.
It was a Davis Mills game, though, to be fair.
It was. But at the same time, I don't trust the Texans. I'm not going to make that mistake
again. 31-3.
I'm pretty sure that was the game where I swore off taking the Texans anymore, and I'm standing by that. They're not going to stop Jonathan Taylor. I don't think they're even going to stop Carson Wentz, the passing attack. Meanwhile, the Colts, I mean, they've stopped far better offenses than the Texans. So plain and simple, just not taking the Texans.
All right. So we both agree there. Now going to the game I just mentioned that we both just picked minutes ago or seconds ago. Philadelphia Eagles, they are favored by 7.5 going to MetLife to play the New York Jets. Jalen Hurts, I believe, will play. I know he's had an ankle injury he sustained last week, which could be dicey. But anyways, regardless, I'm going with Philly. As much as I like Zach Wilson and as much as I'm a skeptic of Philadelphia, I mean, basically, even if Jalen Hurts is 100%, I think the run and pass game can be enough against this Jet defense. And then on the flip side, like everyone knows, this Jet offense, not much talent, and Philly's D-line, especially with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in the middle, I think they're just going to wreak all sorts of havoc, and I just think it's going to be another tough day in the office for my guy, Zach Wilson. So unfortunately, Zach, sorry if you see this, but I'm going with Philly, even to cover the 7.5. It was very tempting to pick the Jets, but especially off a win, and then Philly coming off a bad loss against the Giants, I just think Philly's once again in desperation kind of mode. They need to stay in the playoff hunt, while the Jets, they're just playing for pride a little bit. So I'm going with Philly. John, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going with Philly too. I just think the way they play offense is very conducive to winning the turnover battle. The Jets, unfortunately, offensively, they just tend to have a lot of turnovers. Offensive line doesn't give Zach a lot of time for protection. Not crazy receiving talent. Michael Carter's, still out. And so I don't know what I'm going to get out of the Jets to where the Eagles, I know they're going to run the ball. I know they're not going to turn it over. I know that they're going to play conservative. They're very patient with the run these days, and they get a lot of running backs involved. And Boston Scott has been killing it. And I think that he's probably going to continue killing it in this one because Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard are both still kind of dealing with injuries. Miles Sanders might play in this one, but regardless of who plays, even if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, just the way that Philly runs the ball, I feel comfortable taking them against the Jets.
Yeah, so we both go Philly there. And now, keeping it in Philadelphia's division, where the Las Vegas Raiders are at Las Vegas hosting the Washington football team. Raiders are favored by 2.5. I'm going with Las Vegas. I mean, 3 days rest, and it's just, as opposed to Washington coming off Monday. I know Washington had a good performance on defense, but it was against Seattle, and we already mentioned last podcast, we already railed on how just poor their offense is, their system. Raiders, although not perfect, their offensive system is much better, and I think they'll be able to take advantage more of the Washington defense. And on the flip side, Taylor Heineke's just been okay, and I think that this Raider defense will just be able to do enough for them to win the game and cover. It's only 2.5, so yeah, I'm going with Raiders. I think that they'll win and cover here. John, do you agree?
Yeah, I'm taking the Raiders. Simply put, the Raiders are one of the best teams in the league when it comes to explosive plays. And for anyone who doesn't know, an explosive play is 15 yards or more. Yes, they don't have. I don't think Darren Waller's playing in this one. I'm not sure if he's technically confirmed out. I believe he's not. I believe he's not playing. So I'm even operating the assumption that Darren Waller's not going to be there. I think that Deshaun Jackson could have some big plays. I think that the run game could get going, and mainly it's just because Washington is the worst defense in the league at allowing explosive plays. So I just think the way these two teams match up, Washington's really bad at stopping those. The Raiders are really good at getting those. So I'm going to take the Raiders here. Washington's been scrappy, so maybe they change things and they keep it close, but I don't know.
By the way, Darren Waller is listed as doubtful, so probably he didn't practice as of today, Thursday, so he's not practiced all week. They said it was week-to-week injury. Unlike Daniel Jones, where he's actually practicing this week, it's not looking like Darren Waller will play. So hopefully we're right. Regardless, we both picked the same thing. So if I'm wrong, that's one I'd be fine being wrong on. But now keeping on the West Coast, where the Los Angeles Rams, they go back home to SoFi Stadium, where they are favored by 12.5, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going LA. I think that they'll win and cover. This is the ultimate get-right game, if there ever is one, for Sean McVay and the gang. Hopefully we can see them maybe be more patient with the run and get that more involved. And then hopefully the defense can get back on track, because that defense also has been as good as of recently, especially with all the talent that they've accrued there. John, do you feel the same way? Do you think that the Los Angeles Rams, almost the Chargers, will cover?
Yeah, gonna take the Rams. I'm gonna pull it up just because I can't exactly remember. But last week the Jags they got blown out by the Falcons. Wasn't even close. I think the Rams are far superior from the Falcons, and also the Rams have lost, I believe, 3 straight games. So it's just not getting pretty. The Falcons, it wasn't a blowout. It was 21-14, but it was still, that's in the spread world, covering by 7. That's a lot. So. I just think the Rams, they're just far superior, far more talented than Jacksonville. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, they just have a lot that's going to be going towards Trevor Lawrence's way. And then I have no idea how their defense is going to stop Sean McVay's air attack. This is one of those sort of bounce back, make right games that the Rams desperately need. And I think they're going to put the foot on the gas and get it.
Yeah, they should. Otherwise, we will be definitely talking about them on Tuesday next week. But now, going over to one of the divisional matchups here, Baltimore Ravens, they are favored by 4.5, coming off that ugly Sunday night win against Cleveland. They're going to Pittsburgh, where the Pittsburgh just got beat up by the Bengals, so Pittsburgh's at home. Anyways, with all going on with Pittsburgh, we talked about them last episode. TJ Watt is not expected to play. I was surprised you went, anyways, I'm going Pittsburgh. I just got a feeling they're going to keep it tough and close. And like we mentioned too last podcast, the Ravens they've been winning ugly. They've been winning, but they've been winning ugly. And I think Pittsburgh will at least keep it close for pride. But at the end of the day, the only thing that does scare me is Big Ben. I just don't know if I can trust him. And then, especially with no TJ Watt, I am afraid that Lamar will be able to have his way in the backfield, either running or just buying more time in the pass game. But nonetheless, this is a pride game. I think Pittsburgh has to come out and try to play for themselves, play for their coach, Mike Tomlin, and keep it close, especially at home. So I'm going Pittsburgh. John, where are you going here?
I know that it didn't work for me last week. I've been, harping on this strategy that when the Steelers are underdogs, you take them and they tend to cover. It didn't work for me last week, but I'm still riding that strategy. I know there's no TJ Watt, but also Lamar, like you just talked about, Lamar he's coming off a really ugly performance against a Cleveland Browns defense that they're all right. Like they're not amazing. They're all right. To where the Steelers, I think, as much as I prefer what the Browns have offensively, I think I'd almost trust the Steelers offense to put up more points than what the Browns did at 10. Because I think that Najee Harris is just very talented. They're going to, get him really involved. Also, I just simply expect Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool to have far more of an impact than the Browns receivers did. So I'm going to take the Steelers to keep it close, even without TJ Watt. And their defense, honestly, this year just hasn't been as good as they previously were. I'm still taking the Steelers. I don't know. It's Steelers Ravens are just always such close games. It's really hard to take, the Ravens with that many points.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously, so we both went Pittsburgh there. And now, basically from here on out, it's all divisional matchups. So I won't keep saying it. But now going to the NFC West for this one, the San Francisco 49ers, they are favored by 3.5 going to Seattle. I am going with San Francisco. I mean, no, it shouldn't be much of a shocker. I already railed on how bad Seattle's offense is as opposed to what it could be. And I just don't foresee them just changing themselves overnight. And even though there's no Deebo Samuel, I expect, Elijah Mitchell still had a good game last week, and they'll probably give some of that Deebo Samuel backfield sweep work to Brandon Ayuk, who did most of it last year, which is why he was highly touted coming into this year. And he's actually he has been coming along as in recent weeks as well. The 49ers are just on a roll, like we mentioned, and I think that they can foresee themselves in the playoffs. They're kind of in the driver's seat per se to make some moves. So I'm going San Fran, and I just don't have any trust in Seattle. What about you, John?
Well, I'm gonna take the Niners here, and the key number for me is 30, and I'll explain why. So since Russell Wilson has come back from injury, they've had 30 offensive possessions. Can you guess how many times they've scored a touchdown out of 30
I'm trying to think
chances?
off the top of my head. I think they scored one. I'm trying to think. They scored two last week, I think. I'm gonna guess he's been back 3 weeks now. I'm gonna guess 4.
3 weeks.
Four.
Close. They've only scored 3 touchdowns
Okay.
in those 30 offensive performances offensively. That's pretty terrible. Meanwhile, once again, the number 30, the 49ers in 4 out of their last 5 games have scored over 30 points. They've just been on a roll. And I know that Deebo Samuel and Fred Warner are going to be out in this one. I still just don't know how I can trust Seattle to put up points, especially when you're going to have to compete with, like you said, Brandon Ayuk, who I think is easily going to fill the Deebo Samuel sort of hybrid running back, wide receiver, do it all role, because, like you said, that was his role last year. And then Elijah Mitchell has just frankly been destroying it as a running back. George Kittle's still there. I mean, Jimmy G has looked solid. And on the other side, like we just talked about, like where is Seattle going to get their offensive performances from? I thought last week was going to be the bounce back game. There was really no excuse for not having it. Washington is just not that great of a defense this year, and they didn't have it. And that was with their defense getting them the ball back multiple times, getting turnovers, all that kind of stuff. And Seattle still just couldn't score outside of their one good drive, and then it took like a late blown coverage to where they got a touchdown. I don't think that happens in this one, and I don't think their defense is able to stop the San Fran running attack. So taking the Niners.
Alrighty. So now we go to the Sunday night game. This one got flexed. I forget which game. Did this replace the Steelers Ravens? I forget which game they replaced. This
I
game
can't
replaced.
remember.
Anyways, not that really matters. Kansas City Chiefs at home or at Kansas City. Fresh off a bye, they are favored by 9.5, hosting the Denver Broncos, who beat the Chargers last week. I am going Denver. I know if my parents are watching this, they're probably shaking their head. But listen, I think Kansas City will still win this game, but it's 9's just too much for me. As we know, Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to take care of the ball. And this Denver defense, especially under Vic Fangio in recent years, although they haven't won, they've giving the Chiefs some problems. They have good secondary guys. I almost said Justin Simmons, safety in the back, and we saw how good Surtain was last week, and just well coached in regards to the passing game. And if there is a weakness to the Denver defense, it's the run defense. But Andy Reid's just never been the guy to say we're going to be a run dominant team today. So anyways, I think Chiefs win, but I think Denver keeps it close here. What about yourself, John?
Yeah, I completely agree. Denver has been a team that's really hard to figure out, but if you actually look at them statistically, their point differential is better than the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs have a better record. And so when Denver loses, they're keeping things close, and when they win, they win by a few scores. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, I know that people are like really quick to just say like the Chiefs are back, and yeah, they're 7-4, they're top of the division. They're actually really close. I think they're one game behind from actually being top of the AFC, but I'm still just not fully convinced that they are the Chiefs that we expect them to be. And so I think Denver can keep it close. I still think Kansas City wins, but with the spread being that big, I just can't comfortably pick the Chiefs, who have, even in the midst of them being back, are inconsistent.
We'll say though, maybe Andy Reid off the bye week. That's a thing, and maybe we'll see. But once again, like you're saying, I'm willing to take this L just to
Yeah.
see it, to believe it. But
Yeah.
they have been trending at least somewhat upward before their bye in terms of offense.
But
So
meanwhile, Denver has too. I mean, they had a big win last week.
So we will see there, but we both went Denver to cover. But now going to the Monday night game for an AFC East divisional showdown, where the Buffalo Bills, they are at home, favored by 3.5, hosting the New England Patriots. I am going New England. This is a tough game to pick, but I mean, I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like there. It is December. It's going to start getting cold. Not that Josh Allen can't throw through the cold, but it's just you got to lean more on the run game in the cold weather, and especially against New England. We know that their secondary is good, very well coached, especially with J.C. Jackson there. And yeah, I think the Bills' offense is going to have a tough time. And then on the flip side, I think New England is a good enough offense to have a few successful drives, just enough to win the game. Especially with no Tre'Davious White there. Like I mentioned last week, if they need to play man to man in crunch time in the critical situations, I'm not confident. Although I'm not confident in any of their corners really to do the job. And I know that New England doesn't have the most amazing receivers, but they still have solid guys. Kendrick Bourne's been coming on of late. Aguilar's had moments. Hunter Henry's really been coming along, and Johnny Smith slowly as well. And then also, I mean, like New England can run the ball. They have a good big offensive line, and we saw a few times that the Bills, you can run the ball in the Bills, especially if you have a good pass game, because you put them in a bind. So I'm going New England. It hurts me to go against my guy Josh Allen, but I want to be right. So I'm going New England here. John, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Patriots as well. And really, to me, it just comes down to what the Patriots have defensively. Um, I mean, J.C. Jackson, he's probably gonna be getting a lot of Stephon Diggs, and I think that Diggs, he's an amazing wide receiver. And even last year, I mean, he won me my fantasy championship because of the performance he had against the Patriots. But I think that J.C. Jackson is having probably the best year of his career, and so I think that could be a really interesting matchup. Meanwhile, the Bills, I just don't really believe in their run game, especially against New England. And then outside of that, who do you rely on? In the red zone, maybe you rely on Dawson Knox. But guess what? The Patriots are probably the toughest team to place when it comes to tight ends. I saw something crazy, and I'll get into this more later because Dawson Knox is actually one of my sits of the week. But the Patriots over the last 3 years have not allowed a single tight end to go for 100 yards. And in fantasy purposes, they've over those 3 year spans, they faced, I think, like 150 total tight ends, if you include starters, backups, all that kind of stuff.
I mean,
It's
they
tight ends
played,
who
they
have
played
played.
George Kittle last year. I remember they played the Niners.
They played Kittle, they've played Kelsey multiple times, they've played Waller, they've played Mark Andrews. They played a lot of the top tight ends, and only 17 of the 150 got double digit fantasy points. So that just means that tight ends typically are not producing. And that's with PPR scoring. If it's just standard scoring, it was only 3, I believe. So That's fantasy specific, but all that means is they tend to take away your tight end from you, and that's one of Josh Allen's favorite targets, specifically in the red zone. And we know they don't really have a run game. So then, like, what are you going to do? I think they're going to take away Knox in the red zone. So maybe you got to throw to Beasley or Diggs. Josh Allen has to run it. I don't know where the points are going to come from when they get there. And then I think the other big thing, like you said, no Tre'Davious White. I don't really believe in the depth they have at corner. It's just not really there. Like Levi Wallace, I think is their best corner
Like,
now.
and Levi's a solid like zone corner and a good and like a borderline good number 2 in my eyes. But yeah, like I think what you're alluding to, just not number 1 guy. No offense if he's somehow watching Levi, but
And who's like this
I
is
don't
a
even know what's
passing attack that
their
is
third
not
corner.
gonna. I have no
I'll look it
clue,
up. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud.
but this is a passing attack that does not put the ball in harm's way. That is gonna take what you give them, and I think that like this is where your corners need to step up because I think the way that you beat the Patriots is you got to make Mac Jones uncomfortable, and they have a really good offensive line, so you're probably not going to necessarily do it through pressure. So you got to do it with the coverages that you can, deploy. And with no Tre'Davious White, I don't feel super comfortable in the Bills. So I'm going to take the Patriots. Plus, the Patriots, they're the hottest team in the league right now. I think they've won like 6 straight.
Yeah. Just for our purposes, in case anyone else was wondering what the cornerback depth chart was in Buffalo, they do have Taron Johnson, who's mainly their nickel guy, and then after that, it's Dane Jackson, who I don't know. So and then there's one more guy, Siran Neal. So I mean, maybe
Don't
they
know.
can bring down Micah Hyde. I remember, in Green Bay, he played more of the slot division. Maybe he has to come down and they put someone else at safety. I'm not sure what Doug McDermott's going to do, but nonetheless, I mean, it's tough to whoever is going to come in. It's going to be tough to come in against New England.
Yeah.
They're very smart, and then regardless, even if Buffalo does pull off the win, I just don't foresee New England losing by that much. Anyway, it's going to be a close game. So
When they've lost this year, they've been close. Like the
yeah,
game against the Buccaneers, the Cowboys game went to overtime. They're losing close games and they're winning big time.
so hopefully we're both right there. But that is the picks for Week 13. For disagreements, so with our luck, we will split them. That's probably how it go. And I'm gonna be really upset about the Detroit one because I know if we split, the Detroit one's gonna be the one to bite me in the butt. So those are the picks for the week.